Let's give a big welcome to Dan Clay.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm from Michigan, so it is like the delight of all delights to be back in Michigan. When I lived in Michigan, I did not think that I would write a very gay book that took place in Michigan. I wanted nothing other than to be less gay when I was in Michigan. So it feels wonderful to be, I moved after high school, so I came out afterward. Nothing against Michigan. So it's just so delightful to be back here, and I love Ann Arbor. And I'd love to just chat a little bit about my journey to drag, which then led to wanting to write a book about drag. And really the impetus was to write a book where the main character's identity wasn't the cause of the problems, but the solution to the problems, where the challenges that he was going through were very, very real challenges, and loving his identity and embracing drag was what got him through it rather than what got him in it. And that was very much my experience with drag. It just started fixing things that had nothing to do with LGBTQ identity. It just started fixing my relationship with my parents, it's just amazing how authenticity can work wonders on things that even feel completely unrelated to what is the issue in the first place. So let me get the little clicker. And that is my much more popular version of myself, but it's way too hot. I don't know if anybody's done drag in this room, but it is way too hot to be in a wig. Wigs are like their own ecosystem. But that is Carrie Dragshaw, and we're gonna talk about the love of drag. And I'm going to do a short reading, and then if you have any questions, and then there's time for signing and just hanging out and whatever we want to do with our time together. But this was me before I found drag. Sad. Working a corporate job. Didn't know why he was, what is all of this for? What's the point of any of this? And I really did, even into probably older than I should have been, just felt like there was, especially, I did have a pretty corporate job and I consulted banks, and I just felt like there was one way to be a leader. I was very surprised in adulthood that there existed a version of homophobia within homosexual circles. Like, that was sort of a shocking thing. I was like, wait a minute, you're mad about femininity? I thought we were all, I was like, oh, I have to, butch it up on dates. I have to butch it up in the office. I have to do all of these things. But then it was resulting in what on the outside was like a happy life, but somewhat unfulfilled. And so I went on this solo vacation, and I'm a big fan of a solo vacation because of this vacation, where I was just like, I need to just go somewhere without any external influences and just figure it out, because I should be happier, and I'm not, for no one's I have all the, you have all the ingredients for happiness, and there's just something standing in the way. And so I went without a phone, which now seems kind of like insane, but I did. And I just sat on this beach called Playa Hermosa, and I just thought about things and didn't allow myself to turn to any distractions, and just kind of sorted out, like, okay, what's missing? And for me, what felt missing was a creative outlet. When I was younger, I was just so creative. Musicals, we talked about musicals, and you're just building floats for the homecoming. You're just doing all of these things that have obviously nothing to do with where you're going in life. Like, I'm not going to become a float maker, but it was just fun and creative. And so I thought, I just need to inject creativity into my life. And so that Halloween, I had always, ever since seeing the show Sex and the City when I was first moved to New York City, I had dreamed of dressing up like Carrie Bradshaw for Halloween, but I just didn't have the courage, and it was scary to me. And also on Halloween, you know, I wanted to be like a sexy firefighter. Like, I don't know, just these stupid pressures. And so that after this vacation, I was like, I'm doing it. I remember my friends came and they're like, oh, we're gonna do a group costume. We're gonna be like sexy horoscopes. What is a sexy horoscope? This is so dumb. I'm like, I'm doing my own thing. And so I did. And I dressed up like Carrie Bradshaw. And it really was one of the best days of my life. It was so fun, and coincidentally, I live right near the house where they filmed it, and so I pranced down there in my heels and tutu. And Halloween is such a safe time to be in drag because nobody thinks you're actually in drag; they just think you're in a Halloween costume. I'm like, have no fear. And it was just the best night. And then my friends and I went out, and this was, you know, if I was a real Carrie, I wouldn't have made this mistake, but I didn't have a purse. So I didn't have anything to carry things around with. So I went out with my friends and went out without a phone, left my keys in my flower pot. I'm like, I'm just a free woman. And then I came home, and the picture had gone crazy in a way that I still don't understand. I mean, I think I had 25 friends, 19 of whom I was related to on Instagram. Like, there was but it was just this delightful, you know, viral moment on Halloween, and it was so much fun. And it was just this, there were like messages in Japanese, and these crazy, it was like such a joyful experience. And I had taken a ton of pictures on Halloween because you do that. So I posted another one more as an inside joke to my friends. Remember yesterday when my Halloween picture, and that was such a delightful experience. How crazy was that? In a more reflective tone, but this one also went crazy viral. So I'm like, am I a drag queen now? Like, are the algorithmic gods telling me that I'm supposed to be a drag queen? And this was in October of the first time we have the current president, when he got elected. So this happened, and then we got a new president, and I was just like, what can I do? You know, I think all of us have a role to play in the world, and I was so uncomfortable with the rage, really, that I was feeling, and the confusion and the anger. And so I thought, you know, maybe this is a way to just spread a little bit of love into the world. And maybe just, I kind of thought of it as like, oh, this could be a bridge back to sanity for a few of my friends and for me. But before doing it, I was like, okay, well, you're not allowed to become a crazy Instagram influencer who puts his self-worth in how many likes you get and all of these things. So I gave myself little rules for Carrie Dragshaw. The first was, it's only love. Like, I'm doing this as a result of a certain situation in the world, but the channel itself would just be love, 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 love. He's not invited. Like, I'm not going to opine on the G20 summit, even if I have thoughts on the G20 summit. Like, this is a place for love. The second was for my own mental health. It's like, you don't care about how many likes you get today. Don't start caring about that. And then the third, which is what ultimately led to this, was no drag without writing. I'm not a particularly good drag queen. I'm very devoted to accuracy in my impersonation, but I'm not like a great queen. I love drag queens. But I have always loved writing. Writing was a big part of my corporate job. And so I'm like, oh, maybe this is back to that Playa Hermosa. Maybe this is the opportunity to have that creative outlet, right? So the captions became as important to me as the pictures, where it was just about, you know, processing things that I mean, I think what made Sex and the City, the original one, so relatable was that they were experiences that people in the dating world were going through. So I just kind of channeled my inner Carrie into these little captions. really took it somewhere. And it was so much fun. It is so much fun. And I still, 8 years later, spoiler alert, I'm still dressing up like my favorite TV show character. But it is so much fun. It was exactly what I needed. It was completely ambitionless. Carrie Dragshaw had no 5-year plan. There was no, oh, I hope in certain time I'll be here. Like, there was none of that. It was just for joy, to spread love. But at the same time, I was a little bit terrified. I did do strategy consulting for banks. I was like, will any client ever take me seriously? I was nervous about, I was single at the time. I was nervous about, would you date this man? Like, I was just very nervous about the ramifications. But then there was a moment that sort of made me ignore all of the, pretty constant voice of doubt in my own head. And when I was little, I would sneak into, I have an older sister, and I would sneak in when my family was watching, I don't know, TGIF or something, and they were like gripped by a Full House plot. I would sneak up to my older sister's bedroom, and I would try on her dresses. And I didn't know why I needed to do this, but I needed to do it. And it was not enjoyable. It wasn't like I put it on and I'm like, yes, work, diva. I put it on and I was just terrified. I was like, this is so, but I just had to wear a pretty dress. And about a couple months into Carrie Dragshaw, this mom sent me a message, and it was a picture of her son, and she had found him in his cousin's closet wearing one of her dresses, and the look on his face was one of complete fear. And she was concerned because she didn't know where that fear came from. She didn't put it there. She was and I even went to her profile. She was like she was the mom of your dreams. She like had a sleeve tattoo. She had bleached blonde hair. She was so cool. So she was like, I didn't put that there. We live in a very accepting place, so I don't know who put that fear there. And she didn't know what to do to tell him that it was fine. And what she did do was show him my Instagram account, which was shocking to me because still in my head, this was like a little art project that I was doing for myself that nobody else saw. And she told him that, it's boys can wear dresses. And he looked at it and he's like, wait, that's a boy like me? And she's like, yeah. And why does he wear dresses? And like, because it's fun. And so that was just this moment where I said, even if you're terrified, even if certain clients are like, what's going on? Just keep doing it and use drag to spread love. And it became this tremendous source of love in my life, and hopefully a source of love in many other people's lives. And that's why obviously, I still on Carrie have the rule of it's only love. But it's been so, when I started writing this book, it was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. I was like, oh my God, by the time I finish this, everybody's going to be a drag queen. Drag is going to be such a non-topic. RuPaul will be president, and like we're going to be the arc of the arc of history will have bent so far toward justice that the Supreme Court justices will be drag queens. Like, this is going to be nothing to worry about. And for it to have gone the other direction is so baffling to me, because every drag queen I've met, every drag experience I've had has been full of such joy and love and acceptance and open arms. It's like the least dangerous thing in the universe. And I don't know, it's my last, I think we're safe, so I think I can say this, but my last book event, there was a bomb threat that forced it outside, and it was just so shocking because you can't help but absorb that at least a little bit, where you're like, wait, me? I'm the threat? But obviously not, and obviously it has nothing to do with any individual. But it just, this connecting with this kid and with the many, many delightful, amazing people that I've had the great fortune to connect with through Carrie has just given me such a driving force of life to just spread the joy and love of drag as far as possible, and make, you know, scared little kids happy little kids, because there's nothing wrong with wearing a dress. And then at the time I kept doing it, and then Carrie Dragshaw became everywhere. She really had a moment that I'm still a little bit, it's just not my personality to pursue something like that. I never wanted it. I never dreamed that it would happen. It was delightful as it was happening. It was also terrifying. I was very scared of the corporate ramifications. And then I had another moment akin to this moment with that mom where I was consulting with this big bank, like big, terrifying bank. And we were giving this very serious presentation, and I was doing the data readout. So, you know, extra serious portion of it. And it was like, well, you need to learn how to leverage the power of our differentiated assets, and, you know, really playing businessman. And it was the final presentation to this client. So the CEO, president, board members, there were all these people there. And after the presentation, the chairwoman of the board calls me over, me specifically, and all of my bosses are like, why does she want to talk to you? You are 18 levels below who she should want to talk to. And they were thinking there was probably a problem with the data, and she was gonna be like, you know, the chart on slide 47 in the appendix was blah, blah, blah. So I walk over, and she is, you know, just this really, really powerful businesswoman. And she calls me over, and she leans over, and she goes, I know who you are. I'm like, the world's preeminent branding agency consultant. And she just went on, and she was talking to me about her favorite Sex and the City outfits that I hadn't done yet. And she was like, oh my gosh, and you got to do this. And she's like, and you know, oh my God, she's just going on. And it was just this moment where, you know, I think, yeah, of course, the world is not perfect, but at least in my experience, a lot of my fears were projections of my own insecurities rather than things that I actually had a reason to be afraid of. So I kept doing it. It was really, really delightful. I ended up meeting the woman herself, who was, you know, above and beyond amazing and kind and generous with her. It was just one of the greatest moments, and it was by far the most like high profile thing I'd ever done. So it was just this beautiful thing where embracing all the things that used to terrify me was what actually allowed these moments in life that were bigger and more beautiful than anything I ever imagined for myself. And it was just really the plot twist of my entire life, where we're like, wait, the things that I was trying to push down were actually the things that I needed to let out. And you know, for me, aging has been a gradual realization in the wisdom of cliches. And there was a moment very shortly after this where I was in my apartment, you know, thinking my deep thoughts, like, be yourself. Be yourself. Like, that is what this whole convoluted thing has just been pointing to. Like, oh my God, I needed all of this just to be happy with myself. How embarrassing. But I did, and it ended up fine. And then after all of this, because I was following my rule of no drag without writing. And so now we're segueing to where this book came from. And so I was putting a ton of energy into these captions, and someone from Penguin Random House reached out and just asked, you know, have you ever tried any longer form writing? And I really hadn't, but just this request then it was like opening a waterfall of possibilities, because it was, you know, somebody that I wasn't related to who thought, you know, oh, maybe there's something to this writing thing. And so I just really, really started devoting myself to writing. I started thinking about, okay, what are characters that I would find interesting, and could somehow capture the joy of drag that I've found in my own life. And so the book that I ultimately wrote is, kind of putting someone in what I believe to be one of the hardest life situations imaginable, and seeing if drag could get him out of it. And I really wanted drag to be the hero of the story. There are a ton of amazing pieces of media, and whether it was books, movies, where, it was something that I experienced where the fear of drag is really what's driving the plot. Like, oh, could I ever wear this dress? But I really wanted drag to be the hero of the story rather than the thing that the character was afraid of. So I had to put him in a situation that that was scarier than a dress. So I did. And oh, I forgot I put that joyful animation in there. And so then I was like, okay, well, now I have to learn how to write. and I got all of these amazing books. One of the other things that makes me so happy to be in a library is I am, like, I don't know, if the New York Public Library kept statistics about like most frequent visitors, it would be, me and that kid who checks out all the dinosaur books. Like, I love the library. I'm constantly in the library. And I went to the library and just got every book on how to structure a novel, and I went to this amazing retreat called Highlights. So does anybody remember like the little thing in the dentist office where it's like spot the difference and little crossword puzzles for kids? So that organization also runs a writing retreat near New York City, and it's specifically targeted toward, because I knew that I wanted to write for young adults. I was kind of like, by the time you're an adult, like, you're probably, you're done. but when you're in high school, you're not fully baked yet. And what I mean, like, by the time you're an adult, you're probably accepting or you're not accepting, and there's not, or you're gonna need someone different than me to walk you through that journey. I'm just a gentler guide. So I knew very intentionally I wanted to write for young adults. And so Highlights, this magazine, runs a retreat near New York. And so I went to that retreat, and long story short, I mean, it was many years, and it was very hard with a tremendous number of rejections. But ultimately ended up, there's something coming, but maybe it's frozen. I'll go over here. And I need to go over here anyway because I'm going to read from my little book. But ended up getting a book deal with Macmillan that was, again, just more, even when I started writing the book that became the book, it was still in my mind, it was still that exercise for myself. It was still that like creative endeavor to just have myself not go crazy while working a corporate job that I still love. So if any of my bosses are watching the live stream, I'm grateful. But it really was that. And so then the possibility that it could become a book that, and even while I was writing it, I was like, it was as much for me as it was for, some imaginary writer. And I did find an amazing, I mean, if there were one thing that I learned from the process, it was, even if you have no ambition to become a writer, there was something magical I found about forcing certain thoughts into sentences. And we were talking a little bit about this before this started, but there's just something magical about even some, this character goes through some of the insecurities that I went through growing up. And there was just something so powerful and final about putting it on a page. And then it's done. And it really has been done for me in many powerful ways. And so I'm like beyond, it's the joy of my life when people have connected to the book, but it really was as much a healing exercise for me as it was a connection exercise for other people. So the fact that it could reach other people, it made me very happy. And so there was one element in the book that came directly from, so to go back to the very beginning of the presentation when I was talking about, going on the beach and finding myself and having my little eat, pray, love moment, or really just sit moment, because I don't think I was praying or loving in that moment. But I was looking up at the stars, and obviously the stars are incredibly vivid the more remote you get, and they were really, really vivid. And so I was looking around and I was like, oh, how can I find where's the Big Dipper? And then I was like, it's really kind of bogus that I'm looking for the Big Dipper right now instead of just embracing the beautiful chaos of the stars. Like, why am I forcing it into these little shapes? And that's where the main character of this book emerged out of, is like, he just wants to be the vital cosmos, and the world is trying to force him to be a spoon. And that was the insight that sort of led to this character. And then it is in the book, in the very beginning of the book, he's leaving this party that he did not have a good time at because he got broke up with his boyfriend. And so I lie back on the grass and look up at the stars, but I can't even find the Big Dipper. Whatever. Constellations are bullshit anyway. Is there anything more insulting to the stars than forcing them into constellations? The beautiful, vital chaos of the universe. And we think it'd be better to say it looks like a spoon. And so that was like the starting point of the book, and I'm sure every writer is different but for me it definitely started from this kid that is just like sick of just this constant like forcing you to be smaller than what you actually are, and just wants to, blossom into the stars, or in his case, into a dress. So I'm gonna read a little bit up from it. I'm going to read the section. I was trying to think of which. Does this one work as well, this microphone? Okay, amazing. I don't want to cause any screeching. Where he's with a guy who is much more supportive, and he goes back to the closet where he's hidden the dress. I haven't even touched it since Halloween, stuffed it in a dark corner of my closet and an even darker corner of my memory. But tonight, no guardians at home, a guardian angel on my mind, and a sticky boyfriend by my side, it's time to share what I really want to wear to Winter Ball. What I've dreamed of wearing to a ball ever since, on a swiveling maroon bar stool in Herschel's Diner. Does anyone remember Herschel's Diner? Michiganers? I forget where specifically it was, but it was this little, it closed, but it was a little Michigan throwback. I discovered a new level on the metronome of my heartbeat. And as I reach to the back of my closet, more than excited, I'm just angry that I waited this long. It just seems sometime not long after you're born, you're given this life, beginning to end your entire story, and your job is to just fit into it. And it's the same life for everyone. It's as if they just look at you, no matter who you are, and say, hey, kid, here's my life. Now it's your turn to live it. And they put you in a little baseball outfit before you can walk. And then you put you in a freaking firefighter costume because it's just like way more complicated to try to live a different life. And even if you're gay, you just have to live that same life, because if you don't, well, your entire story becomes about the dress. Your plot line gets devoured by a dress, even though it's just like what felt right for your life. Inside an unmarked white gift box, inside a bright orange shopping bag, sparkling underneath a carefully folded, semi-transparent film of off-white tissue paper, lies purple fabric shinier than a new car. tulle as fulfilling as the final clue in an unsolved mystery, and sequins more triumphant than the final high note in the greatest I Want song ever sung. The purple princess dress with puffy sleeves! Ezra bursts out, too impatient to wait for me to get to the punchline. He stands and takes the box as I hold up the dress and take in all its glory. The purple fabric glistens in the glow of my floor lamp. The sleeves crinkle hello as I hold it up by the puffs. It drapes elegantly, almost touching the floor, full and alive, even without a body inside. More taffeta than an entire Disney princess parade, Ezra beams. You will undoubtedly be the belle of the ball. I drop the dress to the ground and kiss him and kiss him and kiss him like kisses have been building up all night. When I'm done kissing him, I kiss him. He pulls back with a smile and looks at the dress on the floor. That's no way to treat a lady. He picks it back up and points his eyes to the full-length mirror on the back of my door. He takes off my shirt for me. The narrow neck hole squeezes my cheeks, scrapes my ears, messes my hair. He smooths my part, stares into my eyes, and tosses my t-shirt to the bed. He unbuttons my pants, unzips while still staring into my eyes. My heart beats. I become my heartbeat. He gets down on one knee to slip off my pants, sliding his hands from my waist to my toes. He holds open the unzipped neck of the dress. I hold one foot in the air, like Cinderella in Old Navy boxer briefs. The slippery fabric tickles my thigh. The sequins scratch my stomach. The tulle itches on my shoulders, and it feels incredible. He guides me by my waist and walks us over to the door, shut tight out of habit. Along the walk, he gives little neck kisses with each step. Through the full-length mirror, he looks me in the eyes, and I hold on tight to a reflected piece of evidence that it just might be possible for someone, one person, to see the whole me and not want to return parts of it for a refund. In the arms of Ezra, I grip the shiny fabric of my purple princess dress with puffy sleeves and smile a smile I didn't even know I had. And it keeps going. So yeah, that is a little bit from Becoming a Queen, and really was so joyful to write. It has been so, now it's been out for a couple years, so it's been just remarkably joyful to connect with people, young people, people my age, about the topics that the book covers, and I'm just so beyond delighted that you took a little bit of your time this afternoon to spend with me and Mark and Carrie. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts, we can continue the conversation, and then I think afterward there's a little signing, and we can go from there. But first, I'll go back to this.
And because this event is being, it's echoey, is being live streamed, your questions, please ask them into the microphone.
Thank you. Where in Michigan are you from, and how did that influence some of the writing?
Yeah, so I'm from Troy, Michigan. And I loved Troy, and I loved growing up there. It influenced it in very literal ways because I think, for anybody who's written, I think at some point you find the limits of your imagination, and the limits of mine were streets. I just can't make up streets, and so I just put him on streets that I was very familiar with. So it influenced it in very specific ways, but then it also influenced it in more plot-driven ways. I think. Something that I found so interesting when I started meeting people from different parts of America, from different parts of the world, there's a line very early in the book that kind of captures, at least, it's ridiculous to speak in terms of, my Midwest experience, because there are as many experiences as there are people, but there's how the character experiences the Midwest is a family that just they think problems aren't problems until other people know about them. So as long as it's just quiet and the lawn is mowed and everything looks good from the outside, we're all good. And we're probably not even going to talk about them with each other. And so we're just going to, oh, how was your day? So he is feeling very stifled by that. And that was definitely something that was drawn from, experience, not my family, thankfully. My family is very open, but from my experience here. So I tried to instill a little bit of that. I tried to find the most extreme instances of just feeling repressed, not necessarily by overt homophobia, but just by this pressure to not talk about your feelings and what's going on. I remember when I went to college, my roommate was from New York, and we were talking, it was the first meeting. And this was also many years ago, and I think conversations about mental health have evolved. But he was saying, okay, well, I'm going to go to my therapist now. And I remember I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I am rooming with a crazy person. He sees a therapist. And I remember he came back, and I'm like, so are you, going through anything? He's like, no, it's just, good to talk to someone and do sort of mental health checkup and all that. I'm like, what? And it was just so enlightening to be. So I think that's part of the journey that this character goes on as well, where, someone where if you acknowledge a problem, it makes it worse, to someone who, believes in facing things head on, and you're not actually going to get through something unless you have the courage to stare at it directly. So that is a little bit how my experience informed the book. You can never know if it is because of the place you grew up or just who you grew up around, or, it's impossible to. And I think the more you travel, people from the South will say the same things about the South. And so maybe it's just the human experience. But yes, roads and emotional repression are how the succinct answer to that. And a lot of fun. One of my favorite places to go growing up was this park called Stony Creek. And then Herschel's Diner was my favorite place to go. And a lot of it was just when I was writing it, not thinking that it would ever be, not even fathoming that it would ever actually become a book. But it was just so fun to, try to remember these moments and capture the vividness of my memory, try to capture the vividness on the page. So that was a fun part of taking place in Michigan.
Now I know Darcy has a question.
What is your favorite Carrie Dragshaw look?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And I'm sure that it's in here. Let's see. I will show you, because really, when it comes to drag, a picture really is worth 1,000 words. Oh, there it is. This one. It's my absolute favorite. It was, so, for those who don't watch Sex and the City, what's wrong with you? But also, you may not know that Carrie Bradshaw loves designer clothes. Carrie Dragshaw has a different body shape than Carrie Bradshaw, and also a different budget than HBO. And so it was this mint tulle dress was a short backstory to this. So the first time I ever saw Sex and the City was in the room of my frat house. So I had HBO when I was a frat boy at Northwestern, because I loved The Sopranos. And I did earnestly love The Sopranos, but it also was convenient that it was the most macho show. So I'm like, I can't be gay. I like Tony Soprano. So there was a group of sorority girls from Kappa Kappa Gamma that found out that I had HBO in my room. And so they're like, oh my God, the Sex and the City finale is this week. We have to come over to watch it. And I pretended to be, this silly feminine show. And they were watching it in my room. I had never seen an episode. and it started playing, and it was the final episodes where Carrie is running around Paris, and so already I'm like, I'm pretending to be writing a paper while they're in the room, and I'm like, who is this woman? And the moment that was emblazoned in my mind was when I saw this mint tulle skirt, and I was just sitting there like, oh my God, this is the most fabulous woman I've ever seen. And if you remember this episode, she's also running all around Paris. So she's just, and she looks amazing, and she's running in heels as if she's Usain Bolt, and it's just incredible. And I'm sitting there repressing all of this. So when I started doing it, I was like, well, this is, and at the beginning of Carrie, I thought I would only do 5 or 6 outfits and then, move on with my life. And so I was, how am I going to make that epic dress? And so I did by threading individual pieces of tulle around a old cut up Speedo waistband. And so it took days to make that. It doesn't even look that amazing, but it was like folding a piece of tulle and then like wrapping like bunny ears through and pulling it on the Speedo and then just doing that 8,000 times. But it was so fun, and it was like this creative experience, and it was just delightful. So it's one of my favorite outfits from the show, and also definitely one of my favorite recreations. And it was really when I started, I love drag queens, and there is a polish to a lot of the most amazing drag queens that I was just a little bit shy about. I'm like, I'm not really a drag, like all my stuff is like, I'm not very good at makeup, and these are all DIY, but I feel like that's when I found my DIY stride, was in that little tulle recreation. So thank you. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
For folks who might be interested in writing in general or specifically like a young adult novel, what's something that you learned throughout your journey writing a novel that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I really was starting from the ground floor. I think that I think there were 3 things that were particularly helpful for me. One was just giving yourself the freedom to write, absent any internal adjudicator of quality. There was this, it's so old, but there was an episode of This American Life where Ira Glass was talking about how one of the biggest challenges of creativity is I think it was This American Life, but it was Ira Glass, where the challenge is that at the beginning, and probably forever, your taste level exceeds your skill level. So when I started writing, if I were evaluating the quality of what I was writing while I was writing it, I would have like, who do you think you are? And I love reading. Reading is the joy of my life. And so there is something galling about sitting at your little desk while a copy of Ulysses gazes down at you, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna add something to the dialogue of letters. Like, this is so ridiculous. But like, just write. Maybe it'll become nothing. I mean, for me, I think the most freeing thing was the thought that it wasn't headed anywhere. It was just, oh, nobody's going to see this. I'm not good enough for anybody to see it. And then if you keep writing, then you might catch, little glimmers of like, wait a minute, that sentence was kind of good. So maybe if I can write a good sentence, then maybe I can write a good paragraph, and then maybe if I can write a good paragraph, then maybe I can write a good chapter. And that's when, like, the second thing that was super duper duper helpful, and maybe for a lot of people this is like so 101, but I subscribed to Masterclass and got all of these classes on just story structure and like just the basics of, you know, act 1, get a cat up a tree, act 2, throw rocks at the cat, act 3, get the cat down from the tree. I mean, really basic things, but that allowed me to take what was just kind of an emotional exercise and start structuring it into a plot. And then the final way was just go somewhere where other writers are writing. And for me, I mean, for anyone doing young adult, like Highlights is amazing. Also, the people writing young adult are just amazing. I think partly because there's a ceiling to how big your ego can get when you know you're writing for 14-year-olds. Like, you can't really do the whole like, because it's like, okay, your biggest dream is to be in a high school library. Like, this is not that pretentious. And so the people are delightful, the instructors are delightful, but something really, 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 really broke open for me when somebody that I had no relation to, wasn't friends with, was able to read something that I wrote, offer an reasoned critique that was rooted in nothing but their expertise. It had nothing to do with them liking my drag character. It had nothing to do with that we go to brunch together. It was just like a professional evaluating something. So I think finding some channel where you can get that guidance, because that's when it then was able to go from like an idea to an actual book, and finding people whose advice you trust and like, are not afraid to tell you what's working and what's not.
All right, questions. So is it time to sign some books? Yes.
I am a complete novice to you and Carrie Dragshaw, so I'm wondering, is Carrie Bradshaw aware of Carrie Dragshaw? Is there any?
She is. Yeah, she's really part of the reason I kept doing it, is because even before I was like, okay, I'm going to turn this Halloween costume into like a character that continues, Sarah Jessica Parker started following me on Instagram, and I was like, well, I mean, I am in the presence of royalty now. I can't just go back to like posting pictures of what I had for lunch and like pictures of my nephews. And then I was playing forward like, okay, well, if I go back to like whatever my boring Instagram was before, like, is she gonna unfollow me? Like, so I just had this vivid image of Sarah Jessica Parker being like, oh, this is not what I thought it was gonna be. And just like, click, goodbye. So she has been, oh my God, supportive throughout. And she was so over the top kind in the very beginning, like sending messages about what she liked. And she was also a huge, I was really spent a lot of time on the captions, and I wanted to, I'm like, can I get, like, lure people in with the drag, but get their attention on the writing? And she was a big part of how that, because every time she commented on it, she would talk about the writing. And so I'm like, okay, well, if she's saying that, then there must be some kernel in there somewhere. And then we have had the opportunity to meet a couple times, and she's just been so above and beyond kind, both in like situations where there are other people, but also in situations where no one else, you know, where if someone were a diva, where, you know, the lights would go down and they'd be like, okay, get away from me. Like, no, she's just the nicest and most generous person. So yes, she's been very kind, and I'm a very lucky female impersonator, because I can imagine, you know, not everybody gets this. They say don't meet your heroes, but you can if your heroes are nice.
Who are some of the other authors that you really love reading or bring you joy?
Oh my God. Well, for the next hour, we'll be discussing I mean, I love reading, and I think aside from like just the one-on-one connection that I've been able to make with certain readers, which is like a category of its own and a thrill beyond description, I think the biggest joy for me is that this is a book. The same way that all books are books. And no, obviously it's not as good as a book by Toni Morrison, but it is a book. And hers is a book. So now we have something in common. And so it has just been like the absolute delight of my life to be in a library where all the other books are. And because in my head it's like, no, it's not really a book, it's like sort of a book, but it is a book, and so are theirs. So I mean, my favorite authors in the world, Toni Morrison, like class of her own for me. Gabrielle Garcia Marquez has also been like incredibly, and just the courage that it takes to write with such imagination I mean, my book has nothing to do with any of that, but it, I think, lent itself. And then also in the YA space, Jason Reynolds is, I was just, because he has such a powerful way of writing about, and my book does cover, it's not all pretty princess dresses, and it does cover serious themes. And so he stares at the truth directly, like we were talking about, but still writes in a way that's entertaining and that isn't just, sort of a trauma dump. There's still excitement in how he writes. So those are people that come to the top of my head, but oh my God, I'm just constantly reading, and anybody who's reading something good, afterward we can talk.
Alrighty, how about a round of applause for Dan Clay?
Thank you again.